Good evening, everybody. Today is January 28th. This is First Alert Plus. Meteorologist Nicholas Snider here. We're giving you updates on a whole bunch of weather that could be headed our way in the coming days. Let's track it. Of course, our next storm headed our way. This one's going to be a bit different, though. We're not seeing snow. We're seeing rain with this storm, and we could even see some spot flooding in some spots. So we got to keep a very close eye on that. Breezier conditions are also set to pick on in. And this is going to be before Friday. We'll tell you when that's headed our way. And then we're talking a pattern change as we head on into February. And you're going to like the likes of what's headed our way. We're going to talk more in depth on that in just a second. We'll start with Friday, though. Of course, that has the potential of being an impactful system that could be headed our way. We are looking at the development of some excessive rainfall over the area. In fact, the Storm Prediction Center, or rather the Weather Prediction Center, has put out an excessive rainfall outlook for much of the region heading into Friday, and that's something we will have to look out for going in there. And let's take a look at that. We have that green area in western portions of the WSAZ viewing area and that yellow area in western Kentucky. That just means there's a little bit more forcing for some heavier rain in that general area. But we are looking at the potential of, again, some spot flooding that could be possible heading on into the day on Friday. We'll highlight some of the features we're seeing. Of course, this is our water vapor satellite. Gives you an imagery of kind of the air masses within the atmosphere. Notice the big old counterclockwise swirl that's back in the west coast right here. This is bringing some much needed rain into portions of California here. Of course, they've needed this for a lot of reasons, mainly due to the fires, of course, and they're seeing that rain develop on in. It's very good news for them. Eventually, the swirl, though, is going to move off to the east, and with it, it's going to bring some very strong winds high up in the sky. This is what's known as the jet stream here. And we're watching one specific area within the jet stream. I want to show you on our model runs right here where that strong wind, the stronger winds denoted by the deeper reds here and the yellows, becomes weaker over us. That's a signal of air kind of converging together, what's known as frontogenesis. It's a term basically means the temperature gradient's getting tighter. And what that does is creates diverging air aloft as well, which will also drive the development of upward motion beneath that. And where you see that, we're going to start to see the development of some heavier shower activity within that red circle there. And that's the concern we could see going into the day on Friday. Of course, that's the European model. Let's take a closer look. Notice Thursday night we start to see the rain move in from the west. Meanwhile, the heavier stuff still remains off to the west out toward the Louisville area and in toward the Lexington area, basically I-75 and points west here, seeing that heavier rain. However, as we move this forward, notice into the later portions of the overnight, we're going to start to see the development of that heavier rain directly overhead in these deeper greens here from Huntington, Charleston, basically along that I-64 corridor here as well. Got to keep a close eye on that with a snowpack that's overhead. We'll get to that snowpack in just a second because that snowpack is really going to have a big effect on what we could be seeing in terms of flooding. Do want to note these temperatures this week, they're going to be warm. So a lot of the snowpack that we do see, what's left over from the storms of the very cold January we have had, is going to start to erode away, start to melt away throughout the week with these warmer temperatures that we will continue to see. Of course, that rain is really going to help to melt that away as well. In those areas where the sun is really not reaching. So that's something to keep in mind here. Let's keep this moving forward. I'll take off the annotations here, and we'll continue to talk about, again, that rain continuing throughout the day Friday. Notice how the front comes through. We start to dry out in the afternoon. Best chances of rain look to be coming in the morning hours of Friday, as opposed to the afternoon hours of Friday. So that morning commute is going to be what we need to watch for intently, where you could be slowed down, where you could be watching for maybe some road closures or high water on roadways. Of course, the main thing you want to remember, you don't want to drive through a flooded roadway. The old saying, turn around, don't drown. If you do drive through a flooded roadway, only a couple of feet of water can sweep your car right off the road and could cause some big issues. So again, just watch for, especially if you're in a creek or stream area, and into those higher elevations of eastern portions of the WSAZ viewing area, that's where we're going to have to watch for the potential flooding, where you have the snowpack combining with the heavier rainfall. Let's continue to move this forward. Again, we start to dry you out overnight Friday into Saturday, and later we'll look at the GFS model, which shows pretty much the same thing in terms of rain accumulation. But yeah, it is going to be an active day for Friday. We're looking at about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of rain. Now, these models today, they've brought the heaviest rains further to the south. This is pretty typical of the models. What they do is they bring them down from the north to the south a few days out. But what will happen in the next, I'd say, 48 hours or so, we're going to start to see these models come back to the north. So these heavier yellow totals that you're seeing here, from Paintsville to Logan to Beckley, up toward Richwood, we're going to see this shift back to the north, I'm pretty sure. And by the time we head on into Sunday, or rather Thursday night, we'll expect to see those heaviest rain totals near I-64. Now, the good news is if you're in the lowlands, that snowpack is rapidly melting away. So there's a lower flood concern in places like Huntington, in places like Charleston, in places like Gallipolis, in places like Portsmouth. However, with the higher snowpack, that's basically in this general area, in Ohio and in the mountains where they saw the biggest impacts from that rain, that's where we're going to see that highest flood threat. So places like Summersville and Richwood, places like Fayetteville, places like Sutton, you have a better bet at seeing some isolated minor flooding. It's an isolated threat. I really want to mention that. Near those creeks and streams that may not be able to handle some of that heavier rain. Very isolated threat, but still something worth watching indeed. Now let's look at some other ones of our models here. This is the GFS model, the American model, showing fairly similar things. This one a little bit more amped up. What I mean by that is it has that heavier rain further to the north, but it's still showing the general trend of the very fast winds right here, fast winds in these oranges and yellows, becoming very slow winds over southern Ohio. Within that red circle that I drew, the horizontal red circle up here in Ohio, in northern Kentucky, and into West Virginia, we're going to have to watch for, again, that potential of some higher water concerns, especially where that air is coming together. It's like a traffic jam. You know how you're on the interstate and you see those cars going really, really fast, and then all of a sudden you come up to slower traffic and the cars get closer together? That's kind of what's happening with this air there. The air is moving really fast, slows way down, really screeches to a halt here, and causes some converging air, rising motion, and the development of some slightly heavier rain showers, again, within that red circled area that I have annotated on that map. Again, a term called frontogenesis strengthens that temperature gradient, forces that air to rise up, producing a little bit heavier of that activity. This is what we look for as meteorologists for that potential of heavier rain. GFS, again, looking at a closer view, notice that band of heavier shower activity in this general area. Now, I think this solution is going to be a little bit closer to what we're going to see in reality. I know the European model is typically more accurate. In this case, I'm looking at the GFS with a further north track here, more amped up solution compared to the European model, and I do think this is what's going to end up being the solution that we do see. Let's continue to move this forward. I'll take off again the annotations that we have here. Moving this forward again, we see that heavier rain expected to continue to work its way further to the east by that Friday morning time frame. That morning commute, again, you're going to need those windshield wipers. You're going to need those umbrellas, because that's a pretty good steady rain coming down for a lot of the WSAZ viewing area. And again, where you see that snow still on the ground, in those creek and stream areas and higher elevations within eastern portions of the WSAZ viewing area, that's your best bet where you're going to see that flood threat with that snow combining with the rain. Because any normal sort of day here, 1 inch and 1.5 inches of rain, really wouldn't cause any sort of flooding concerns. But with the snowpack that we do have, that's where your concern is going to be here. We'll continue to move this forward. Again, the timing of this looks to be mainly Friday morning, because look at this. So all exits out as that front passes. Cold air is heavier. It starts to sink. We get rid of that rising motion. We start to see some calmer conditions work on in for the overnight hours of Friday, and we clear you out going into Saturday morning. GFS showing a similar solution further to the north. And again, I think this is more based in reality here. We see that heaviest rain tracking up basically along and north of that I-64 corridor. Again, I showed you that European model, how it was trending further to the south. I think this, again, trends back up to the north toward that GFS solution, and we see that heavier band of precipitation near and just north of the I-64 corridor, where you could be talking about some rain, instances of 1 inch to 1.5 inches here, and up toward the Athens area, down into Summersville, Richwood. That's going to be your highest concern for the potential of some flooding in that shaded red area that I'm drawing here on the map. Some isolated flooding. It's not going to be a widespread event, and it's certainly not going to be major flooding that we do see. I want to reiterate that. If you remember 2023, where we had the Boone County and the Kanawha County flash floods, certainly nothing like that. Just some minor creek and stream flooding that could cause some high water concerns, a few road closures, and maybe a little bit of minor water damage for you right there. Let's continue to move this forward here. Now we're talking about the snowpack. The good news for the lowlands, and this is why it's going to be such an isolated threat. Notice how little snow we have here. Places like Huntington and Charleston. That's 1 to 3 inches of snow that's still on the ground, and those are in mainly shaded areas. Meanwhile, further to the east, further to the north, you have much more concentrated areas of snow, and then further up into the higher elevations, you almost have 2 feet plus of snow going into the eastern mountains here. That's our main concern up in that general area. That snow is not going to be melted by just warm temperatures. And so when you combine the rain with the 2 feet of snow that's still on the ground up into the mountains, yeah, you're going to be seeing some flood concerns. Let's put this map in motion. That's the current analysis of snowfall. Putting the map in motion shows this gradually eroding away throughout the day Friday. And again, in Nicholas County, in Fayette County, even over toward Braxton County, where you still see that snowfall in place, that's where you're going to have to be worrying about the high water concerns with that snow melt combining with the heavier rainfall activity in that general area. So certainly a lot to talk about with this Friday system. It's not going to be, again, a hugely impactful system. It's not a major winter storm. It's not a major flooding event. No strong to severe thunderstorms or tornadoes or anything like that. But heavy rain during that morning commute could slow you down, could make you need those umbrellas, of course, and eventually, of course, you could be talking about high water concerns in isolated areas with some minor flooding potentially occurring out especially into the higher terrain and where you still have a snowpack in those shaded areas with some minor creek or stream flooding. In the meantime, we got another system to talk about. This one is coming in for the day on Wednesday. Let's move this map further up to the north and west. This is our next system coming in for the day tomorrow right here. It's a weak area of low pressure, but it's causing some stronger winds high up in the sky. And with those stronger winds high up in the sky and a lack of moisture near the ground, we're going to see the development of some gusty winds. Now, it's not going to be overly concerning for much of the area, but as this front really tracks on through overnight tonight into the day tomorrow, again, this is Tuesday into Wednesday, I want you to notice the white lines right here. These are what's known as isobars. They're very close together. That signifies the development of some gusty winds. It's going to definitely be gusty all around the WSAZ viewing area for the day tomorrow. Winds gusting up to 20, maybe even 25 miles an hour. So yeah, those breezy conditions certainly will be a possibility for us, and it's something we're definitely going to have to watch going into your day on Wednesday. So something you'll notice, not going to tip over the trash cans, not going to cause any power outages, but something you'll notice as you're off and about here. Maps in motion. Let's move this forward. We're talking about, again, here's that jet stream. High winds high up in the sky. We're talking winds as high as, let's say, 60 miles an hour in this red area. Now, of course, those 60-mile-an-hour winds, they are not reaching the ground. This is well high up in the sky. At the ground, we have a bunch of stuff to slow things down. We have buildings, we have mountains, we have trees. Anything that slows that wind down adds a frictional force. But again, there's enough up there that you're going to see some noticeably gusty winds for the day tomorrow, and that's why we have to put that, just kind of let you know, for the day tomorrow out there for you. Moving this forward into time here, looking a little bit closer to the surface, I want to show you something else too. how dry it's going to be. Notice the moisture overnight tonight, and notice, boom, right there, tomorrow afternoon, how dry it gets for tomorrow afternoon. Those browner colors signifying that dry weather pushing in. When you get dry weather, it's more likely that you'll see winds high up in the sky filter their way on down to the surface. Now again, we're not going to see 60-mile-an-hour winds. That's certainly not going to be the case, but it's something we will definitely be noticing in terms of wind gusts up to 20-25 miles an hour for your day tomorrow. Speaking of, let's talk about it. Again, 20 to 25 mile an hour wind gusts. What does that do? Could be enough to, of course, make your hair blow around, maybe move your trash can just a little bit if you're going to be out there. It's not going to be enough to tip the trash can over. Not going to be enough to cause any sort of wind damage. It's not going to be enough to blow any of those yard objects around. So very good news there, but it's going to be something you'll notice. Meanwhile, further to the east, in eastern portions of our viewing area, I want you to notice out toward the mountains of West Virginia, these purple colors showing up. Those are gusts up to 40 miles an hour. So if you're taking a trek up to Snowshoe, if you're going anywhere into Pocahontas or Greenbrier counties out toward the Virginia border for the day tomorrow, that will be advisory-worthy winds and impactful winds that could be headed your way. So down near the Virginia border, we're talking about some impactful winds. For us, though, not a whole lot going on in terms of those wind gusts. But again, advisories are in place for those gusty winds just outside of our viewing area. We're talking portions of Randolph County, Pocahontas County, Greenbrier County. That's down toward Mercer, Montgomery counties, and of course Summers County. That's in the wind advisory. It's still 6 p.m. on Wednesday. And again, if you're going down that way, expect some gusty winds. I-77 down toward Beckley, Bluefield. Some gusty winds could blow those tractor trailers back and forth a little bit. Not going to tip anything over or anything like that, but just be wary of those gusty winds further to the south and further to the east of the WSAZ viewing area. Locally, it's going to be a little gusty, a little breezy, but nothing impactful. So some good news for you locally. And still, temperatures are going to be nice too. We're going to see those sunshiny skies and very warm temperatures for your Wednesday, as highs are going to be back into the upper 40s and lower 50s. So don't let any wind gusts deter you from getting outside. You should be A-OK, and we should be looking fantastic for your Wednesday. But with the dry conditions, with the gusty winds high up in the sky, some of that will filter down. There's also a high wind warning. I do want to point that out. That's up toward the Maryland border, so traveling along I-68 in those mountains up there, up I-79 toward I-68 into Garrett County, Maryland, that's where you could run into some trouble there. And it's something we are definitely going to have to watch within that circle there, that high wind warning in effect. That's where you could see gusts up to 50 miles an hour. Again, not in our viewing area, but well to our east, could impact you just a little bit. We've been talking about February and how it's going to be very different from January. Everyone wants to know what the weather will be having in store for us in the coming month of February. I've got good news for you. We have much warmer weather on the way. How do we know that? We have to look high up in the sky for this. This is our upper air pattern, and I want to show you what's going on right now. Of course, we got very, very cold air that's centered over southern Canada near that Hudson Bay, with warmer air and milder air further out to the west here, out toward California, and good cold air in Alaska. So this cold air in Alaska right here that I'll highlight for you right now, this is keeping much of the eastern U.S. Fairly warm, or at least much warmer compared to where we had been over much of January. This pattern's set to change though, but it will change for the better, and I'll show you why. Let's get rid of the annotations here, and we'll put the map in motion. Let's keep moving this forward, and we'll stop it toward the middle portions of February. Notice what's happening here. All that cold air is now being confined to the Arctic Circle, up toward Greenland, right in this purple area right here. We call this a positive North Atlantic Oscillation, or NAO, and a positive Arctic Oscillation, or AO, right here. So all the cold air is up there. Meanwhile, the warm air surges in from the south right here. So when you have that positive NAO and AO, what that does for us, it is just pushes that cold air back up to where it belongs in the poles, and it allows us to filter in some milder conditions. Also, something else to note. Notice how Alaska starts to get cold again, right here. That's what's known as a positive EPO, or Eastern Pacific Oscillation. So we got cooler air in Alaska, and we got some cooler air also off in the west coast here. That's called a negative PNA, Pacific North American Oscillation. The combination of all of that seems to want to indicate that we're going to see warmer conditions, that we're going to be seeing wetter conditions over much of the area. I want you to note how active and strong the winds are going to be right here, that temperature gradient right in here. It's what we call the Pacific Jet. Remember, this is a La Nina year. When you get a La Nina year, we're talking about some wetter conditions over much of the United States, with the exception of areas further down to the south near the Gulf Coast. Of course, January threw that completely out the window with the historic winter storm that we did see last week. But the general idea is that we're going to see wetter conditions and warmer conditions in February. So we're going to see springy pattern with soggier conditions and rainier conditions for February. Let's take a closer look locally here. Again, same kind of deal. We're starting with the cold air over much of New England here, which is keeping us more of in a temperate pattern as opposed to the warmer than normal pattern. That cold air continues to be in New England. Meanwhile, we're still seeing those warmer conditions and that positive PNA further off to the west. This will all change, though. That cold air will be set to retreat from the area, back up into the poles, and notice how we're going to start to see those warmer conditions slowly but surely work their way on in. Those colors looking fantastic going into, let's say, the end of next week, where we could be seeing maybe our first 60-degree appearance over the end of the beginning of February. Certainly going to be looking forward to that. I'm sure a lot of us are. So we've got an interesting pattern, to say the least, setting up over February. But the good news is it looks like for the time being, winter is going to take a break. We're going to see that all shift up to the north. And for us, it's going to be a soggy pattern, but it's going to be a much warmer pattern. Of course, First Alert Plus, every Tuesday, 6:45 p.m. will be on all of our digital platforms, giving you the latest on what you need to know with the forecast. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, to like and subscribe. And, of course, share this if you're watching on Facebook. And, of course, share it if you're watching it on our website, WSAZ.com. In the meantime, I'm Nicholas Snider. Make it a great Tuesday.